Okay, I see it is 11 o'clock, and my name is Suzanne Stoltenberg. I'm the Communications Director here at NFIB Pennsylvania, and I thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, Pennsylvania's Legal Climate and New Threats for Small Business. I'd like to thank our sponsors first. They are McNees, Wallace, and Nurick, the UPMC Health Plan, Capital Blue Cross, and Members First Federal Credit Union. We really appreciate their sponsorship. Now, we're honored to have two distinguished presenters today. First, Elizabeth Milito. She's our Senior Executive Counsel for the NFIB Legal Center. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. today. We also have Curt Schroder. He is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform. Beth is going to be speaking about legal trends for small business, but this time we're going to start with Curt, who's going to explain the current legal climate in our state of Pennsylvania and what his wonderful organization is doing about it. So Curt, I throw it to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. The Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform, which I'll also refer to as the PCCJR, is a statewide, nonpartisan alliance comprised of businesses, professional and trade associations, healthcare providers, nonprofit entities, taxpayers, and other perspectives. The coalition is dedicated to bringing fairness to our courts by elevating awareness of civil justice issues and advocating for legal reform in the legislature. Next. The coalition has two basic goals: fair laws and fair courts. Next. Pennsylvania now has a single permanent organization working continuously to improve the civil justice climate. Previous coalitions had come together to promote certain litigation reform issues, the last one being the Fair Share Act back in 2011. However, like other issues before it, once that legislation passed, coalition members went back to their various corners and concentrated on numerous other issues that they would have before the legislature at any given moment. There was no permanent organization remaining to continue to work on litigation reform, yet the trial lawyers remained to occupy that space and press their agenda. And as you can see from this slide, from the list of the board members, that NFIB is well represented by your Executive State Director, Kevin Shivers. Next. Pennsylvania's civil justice climate faces numerous challenges. Recently, the U.S. Chamber completed a survey of all 50 states and found Pennsylvania ranked 38 in its civil justice climate. The Chamber survey revealed that 85% of businesses said that a state's litigation environment is likely to impact where they will do business. Philadelphia made the list of cities or counties with the least favorable litigation environment. The U.S. Chamber also estimates that Pennsylvania could raise its employment rate by 1.5 by 1.5% if meaningful litigation reform is enacted. Small businesses are hit particularly hard by lawsuits. In 2008, small businesses across the country expended $105.4 billion on civil litigation and paid $35.6 billion of those costs out of pocket, as opposed to through their insurance carriers. Next. Now, as sobering as those figures are, the American Tort Reform Association, also known as ATRA, has placed Pennsylvania on its infamous judicial hellholes watch list. ATRA lists the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh Courts of Common Pleas as areas of grave concern in civil litigation. Next. Now, a vivid example of what we are up against in Pennsylvania is the scam exposed by the Philadelphia Inquirer in its recent expose on the Pond Lehocky law firm and its pharmacy. Pond Lehocky is the largest workers' compensation plaintiffs firm in the Philadelphia market. They own a pharmacy. They refer their clients to certain doctors who then send prescriptions to this pharmacy to be filled. The pharmacy specializes in making compound creams that they charge thousands of dollars for, when the same product can be bought off the shelf for a fraction of that cost, often below $100. This arrangement raises many ethical questions, in addition to increasing the cost to businesses, both large and small, for workers' compensation. In fact, I would refer you to today's Philadelphia Inquirer. The Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform is taking this issue head on. Our op-ed ran in today's Inquirer on this issue, and we are calling for the disciplinary board of the state Supreme Court to investigate this entire matter, as well as for passage of stalled legislation that would address this as well. Next.
That's fantastic, Curt. By the way, we're pleased to hear that, and I'll take a look at it, and I'm sure everyone else will.
Very good. Yeah, it's an issue that is receiving an increased amount of attention across the state since the Inquirer did their original expose a couple weeks ago, and this is an issue that is not going to go away. Okay, the Pennsylvania Coalition for Civil Justice Reform has identified numerous issues plaguing our civil justice system. This list highlights those issues, but is not necessarily a comprehensive list. Next. The PCCJR is actively supporting legislation that would address the issues we have identified, and you can see many of those legislative ideas on this slide.
And quickly, in case people are interested in knowing more, have you got more on your website, or at least I think you're going to give your email at the end if they want to know more detail?
Absolutely. We have information on our website on a number of these issues. We also have in our news section of the website updates on several of these issues as well, whether they are articles that I have written, blog pieces that I have written, or articles that have come from other sources that we share as well. Okay, this year there are 7 positions up for election in the appellate courts in Pennsylvania. Appellate courts play an important role in determining how small businesses and all employers are treated in the legal system. Their decisions directly impact the liability climate and therefore Pennsylvania's economy. In November, we will elect 1 Supreme Court justice, 4 judges to the Superior Court, and 2 to the Commonwealth Court. The importance of these races cannot be overstated, and voters typically go to the polls with little information about the candidates beyond their party affiliation. The PCCJR has created a judicial election voter guide which features the candidates' responses to our questionnaire. The voter guide can be found next at our website, which is www.paforciviljusticereform.org. I'll repeat that. It's www.paforciviljusticereform.org. Next. The PCCJR is also active on Facebook. Next. And Twitter. We urge you to follow us on both Facebook and Twitter. In addition, PCCJR puts out regular issue updates. You can sign up for these updates on our website, which I'll repeat one more time, is www.paforciviljusticereform.org. Next. Finally, if you have any questions for me, I can be reached at 717-461-3577 and at Curt with a C, at pccjr.org. Thank you.
And also, Curt, I want to thank you so much, but I want everyone to know they can call NFIB because the people on the line are listening are members, and we can certainly direct them to you as well, and we are interested in hearing their stories. So now we're going to move on to Elizabeth Milito, who we call Beth with the NFIB Legal Center. Thanks, Beth. Now, I just also wanted to mention, if you do have questions along the way here for anybody, feel free to type them in, and I now will be monitoring that and can pose it to our two panelists. So Beth, I let you take it away.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Curt, for that, I don't know, I guess, scary overview. I think you've certainly made the case for business owners to pay close attention to who they're voting for on the ballot when it comes to the judicial elections. I think that's something that people don't pay enough attention to. And the third branch of government, particularly in Pennsylvania, wields an awful lot of power. So thank you for pointing that out. You can go to the next slide there, Suzanne. And I have a little comic relief here. So this is, as you all know, you're small business owners out there, and I always like to say that, you know, NFIB members, the challenges have many priorities and very limited resources. So being a small business owner means more times than not you're responsible for everything. You don't have, often, very rarely, do NFIB members have a human resource specialist or compliance officer or an attorney on staff. So for a small business owner, even the threat of a lawsuit can mean significant time away from the business. And I always tell legislators that it's time that can be better spent growing their enterprise and employing more people rather than responding to a lawsuit. So here at the Legal Center, we are a separate nonprofit public interest law firm, and we were established by the NFIB Board of Directors to provide legal resources and be the voice of small business in the nation's court. So we don't spend our time here suing other businesses or anything like that. 50% of my time at least is spent compliance assistance. So I am here to be a resource for you all. My last slide has my contact information, my email, and my direct phone number. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me directly. With regards to litigation that NFIB gets involved in, again, we're not suing other businesses. We're not there to tie up the courts. We get involved in cases, precedent-setting cases, and generally it's over regulatory matters or the healthcare law. So we are, as I say, suing government agencies when they don't do what they should be doing, which is making things easier for you all there. So let me move now. I'm going to cover just 3 areas here: types of litigation, impact of litigation on business, and then a little bit of interesting information about the use of lawyers. Because small business owners, this often comes surprising to legislators that small business owners use and rely on attorneys, good attorneys, very often to stay out of court. That is what they're using attorneys for. Types of litigation, it's employee complaints. And Curt talked a lot about workers' comp. That is a big problem area. Next slide there. Business-related claims. So these are contracts, a lot of collection issues, and our use of lawyers poll on our last slide there will show that too. That's a big problem. Next slide then, customer satisfaction. So some of it is, you know, lawsuits filed against business owners by disgruntled, unsatisfied customers. Impact of litigation on the next slide going under there. It's not just the financial impact on our members. I would say that lawsuits create a climate of fear. You know, a few years ago, there was national media attention focused on an outlandish $65 million lawsuit that was filed against the District of Columbia dry cleaner for missing a pair of pants, lost pair of pants there. And the facts were just absolutely outrageous. And the dry cleaner ultimately ended up closing their doors. I mean, to fend off this lawsuit, the amount of attorney's fees spent for what was totally a frivolous claim that was truly the travesty. And in this country, we do not have a loser pays system. I get asked that by business owners who are named as a defendant in the case, especially when it's a frivolous case, and they know it's frivolous. And they call and they say, you know, is there going to be a way for me to recomp my fees? And unfortunately, the answer is generally no. You know, you're going to have to pay money to mount a defense or even, you know, respond to a complaint, a demand letter. and that's going to cost money. Curt talked a little bit about the costs of tort litigation, and they are really staggering for small business. The tort liability price tag annually for small businesses is estimated to be about $105 billion. And again, it's that fear of lawsuits, which an NFIB Research Foundation poll found that half of small business owners are very concerned or somewhat concerned about the possibility of being sued. And the primary reasons is they're in an industry that's vulnerable to suits. They don't know when they're going to be dragged into a suit, so it's that fear of not knowing. And just kind of this perception that suits can happen frequently over very silly things. So again, it's that, the impact of litigation. It's not purely financial, but as I said earlier, it's your time and your money, both of those things, and just the stress that comes with it. Next slide there. Small businesses.
Hey, while you're pausing, Beth, yeah. I want to just mention something. When you said things that seem to be silly, I just noticed in the paper here in Pennsylvania another ADA case, which I think is a chunk of what you hear about, where a movie theater in Pennsylvania, privately owned chain, is now to provide an interpreter, hand signer for someone who's both deaf and blind in the movie theater. So I give you an idea of what seems silly to me. Go right ahead.
Exactly. I mean, it is silly. And I think actually if we go on the next slide there, since cost of litigation, I know Curt covered too, this is a big point here, is that small businesses typically do not go to court. I mean, I think we probably all have read that, most civil cases are settled out of court. It's over 90%. But for small businesses, it's actually really closer to 100%. And I think that's in part, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because small business owners are more likely to settle because they don't have the reserves, they don't have in-house counsel, all those things. So they're more likely to settle cases. I think then small businesses are the target of many frivolous suits because trial lawyers understand that a small business owner is more likely than a large corporation to settle a case rather than litigate. And you don't have the resources to hire an attorney or spend time away from, your business fighting small claims. So you're more likely to just write a check there. And that studies have shown that, small businesses try to settle their case. So, with regards to some issues too, I know I've heard this from business owners. They get frustrated when it's, say, a slip and fall or something in their business, and they know the customer was not hurt, or they really doubt that the incident happened at all there, but the insurer oftentimes holds the purse strings and settles the case. So in most cases, if there's any dispute of fact, the insurer is going to perform a cost-benefit analysis. And if the case can be settled for $5,000 or less, the insurer is more likely than not to agree to a settlement because it's less expensive than litigating. I mean, going back to the point again, litigating is very expensive. So there's this nuisance value, but I know that's very frustrating to small business owners, leaving them, kind of dissatisfied, like, oh, gee, the insurance company just was so quick to cut a check. Well, couldn't we have fought it more? But the reality is fighting it more just costs even more money. So now, if we go on to the next slide there, last topic I want to talk about here is the use of lawyers. And it's not all just, I guess the good news, bad news is that small business owners more often than not do have somebody who they refer to as their attorney, who they will turn to for business matters. And I think this poll, when it came out, it was heartening to me as an attorney there to see that, gee, generally, small business owners, NFIB members, have a not bad impression or do depend on attorneys. Might not like what they charge, but they use attorneys. So if we go to the next slide there, this is still talking about liability litigation there. Again, most of the cases are settled out of court. And next slide there, use of lawyers. This is talking about the topics, the kind of subject matter where attorneys are used. What have you consulted an attorney over? And again, that collections issue does come up there. And I get a lot of calls in the legal center about collections matters. And depending on the value of the matter, I will tell you, it may be something that you can handle on your own. depending on what the small claims value is, and I apologize, I don't know what it is in Pennsylvania offhand. I should have looked that up there. But the number one thing that NFIB members use attorneys for is debtor-creditor collections, and more often it's the creditor. NFIB members are calling me because they are a creditor and are trying to collect money. And it's kind of, how do I go about it? Do I need to hire an attorney or not? This is something at the Small Business Legal Center that I say myself, we have another staff attorney, Luke and I are both the staff attorneys, can help you with. We do have a sample demand letter. But again, for higher value things, it might be worth consulting with an attorney just to make sure that you do all you can to collect on an unpaid debt. Going on to the next slide there. Over the last 3 years, have you used an attorney to assist you in a legal dispute? And not quite half, 41% have consulted with an attorney or have an ongoing relationship with either a law firm or someone who they consider their attorney. So again, that's good because an attorney can be a very good resource. Next slide there.
But let me ask a quick question, Beth.
Sure.
And that would be, lawyers have their specialties, and there's a whole variety of things you said these business owners call about with concerns. Should they be seeking out a specialist as opposed to the lawyer around the bend who does everything in the small town?
And that's a great question, and I do get that. As a matter of fact, I had a call this morning from an NFIB member who was asking that very thing. He said, and he used the term my lawyer, drew up our articles of incorporation, those sort of things, but my lawyer has told me he can't help with this matter, the matter being a cell tower lease agreement with a big cell phone provider. So in that instance, he was calling NFIB, and we've referred him to a firm that does, more property rights. So in some instances, you will need a specialized attorney. Employment matters. If you're sued for employment discrimination, you likely will want to, seek out an attorney or a firm that has done some employment defense work. Some other matters, collection matters, a lot of, kind of general practitioners can handle those sort of things, especially if they're smaller dollar. I have found in talking with NFIB members, and I've been here since 2004, and I take, probably half a dozen calls every day, that lawyers, more often than not, it seems, will let their client know if they're not comfortable handling something, as was the situation with this member I spoke with this morning. He said, my attorney just told me he's not able to do this. This is kind of out of his bailiwick, and I need to get somebody that does, lease negotiations, property negotiations, that sort of thing. So in some instances, Suzanne, you do want to seek out a specialized attorney, and I'm happy to take calls or answer questions on that too. So the dollar value of legal fees on this slide here, just kind of mid-range for most, which is good. And let me go on to the next slide then. This is document preparation, and this is another common request for attorneys, and I think an area that can really pay off to have an attorney, even if you take first crack at drafting something, to have an attorney review a contract before you, send it off to another business, or, if you're doing a client, or if it's an employment contract, to have an attorney review it. I think it can save money at the other end, or down the road there, just to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
So for example, Rocket Lawyer or the other one online, you might want to have an attorney review even if you've gotten a document there, because I do believe a lot of small business owners tend to use those services online.
Yes. Yes, I recommend that you have an attorney who is licensed to practice in your state review contracts when at all possible. I just think that's a good practice to make sure that you're not drafting a contract that would be unenforceable in your state. For instance, I talked to somebody recently, a business owner, who has a fencing company, and he is interested now in having his employees or new employees sign a covenant not to compete, that just saying that they're not going to steal customers and go off and start their own fence company in the same town there. And he had gone ahead and drafted his own contract. Well, the state that he's in is very strict on covenants not to compete. In other words, they're very hard to enforce. They need to be very narrowly drafted as far as geographic area and all that sort of thing there. So I highly recommend that in certain situations, that you have an attorney who's licensed in your state review the contract, because if you're having somebody sign a contract that's not enforceable, it's not going to get you anywhere and will end up probably just costing you more money on the other end. Next slide, then. This is just, again, the ongoing relationship. And you'll see there that, small business owners, when they find an attorney they like, tend to stick with them. And that's a good thing. So I do recommend that if you don't have an attorney, you check with another business owner who you trust. Again, you can call Suzanne and Kevin in Harrisburg. I know Curt has a great network too. We are always happy. I call Suzanne not infrequently. If I get a member call, and I'll call her or I'll call Kevin and say, hey, listen, I have somebody, in York, Pennsylvania that's, been named as a defendant in an employment discrimination lawsuit. Do you have a firm that, you might recommend? The sponsor of this webinar today is a great resource too. I know right, Suzanne?
We're talking about McNees, Wallace, and Nurek.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we absolutely, for employment matters. So again, feel free to reach out to us because we are happy to help. I mean, our goal, Suzanne, right, at NFIB is to keep our members out of court. And today I just wanted to point out that by and large, our members avoid going to court because it is so expensive, and for the reasons Curt talked about too. And please don't hesitate to reach out to NFIB, for resources. And if you think you're getting in potential legal hot water, feel free to call us.
And I was also going to mention, Beth, because I've reviewed it myself frequently, helping small business owners, that you have a lot of materials related to employee handbooks and all sorts of other things on the NFIB.com website. And if you look at the foundations, we have a research foundation, the legal center's on there, and there's many things that you can get for free as a member that are legally related.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we have a model employee handbook. We have an OSHA guide there. We have a union guide there if you have any union or labor questions. So a wage and hour guide, which is also very popular. So some of the HR employment matters. Luke Wake, the other staff attorney who I mentioned, is very good with zoning and property rights and environmental matters. So between the two of us and the state office in Harrisburg, we have a lot of resources available. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's all I have. I think that's my last. Is that the last slide then? Flip to the next one.
Let's double check it there.
Yeah, Mike.
This is another one here.
Okay, and this was, oh yeah, just the long.
The time between when you contacted a lawyer.
Right. And then the next slide has my contact information. So please, my name is Beth, but my email is my full name, Elizabeth.Milito.
So anyway, folks, thank you so very much for joining us today. It gave you a little bit of some insight into what NFIB is trying to do, not only to help service their members, but also we are very involved in supporting Curt in a big way here in Pennsylvania. And Curt, thank you so much. If anybody on this line has any legal question at all and or would like to reach Curt, not only can you get on his webpage and he has an email that he's given, you can give me a call if you have any questions and I can connect you. So I thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to record this webinar, so if there was anything there that you'd like to refer to, you should be able to see it on our website in about a day or two. Thank you both so much, Beth, Curt, and all the people who joined us today. Take care, and we will be having another announcement of a webinar in a few short weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.